physics.
Just philosophy and physics. So the idea of tripartite cosmos. It's like what kind of things does that entail?
The cosmos is divided into three levels. The lowest is space. Above space is time. These are not the same thing. So that already we're in violation of Einstein's uh,
Yeah.
relativistic notions. So yeah, so we have space. Above space is time, and then above time is that from which both came. And this is a domain of instant of non-space, non-time, just pure being
And how do you know there is a space of no space and no time?
through physics. The quantum revolution has shown us this
Mm.
quite clearly, and through what's called entanglement, an action that happens in zero time, but
Yeah.
it happens.
I was gonna say
Yeah.
I'm not the PhD person here. Like, what's a quantum entanglement and also the quantum other thing and also entanglement? What are those things?
So imagine a an electron that's in front of your face,
Okay.
and imagine that it has a twin, and that electron is literally on the other side of the universe. Now think of how big the universe is. Okay, but this electron has a twin brother, and it's connected to that twin, like a Siamese twin, on the other side of the universe. And whenever you change the one in front of your face, it instantaneously, at the exact same time, changes the one on the other side of the universe. Now that's zero time. If Einstein were correct, it would take the speed of light to transfer that information,
Mm-hmm.
or to do that act. However, entanglement has proven that it happens instantly, zero time. That is an act that happens outside of time itself, and it's happening outside of space because it's not going through space to do that act. And that's why that is because there's an ontological transition, not a physical transition. Ontology just means being. There's a state of being transferred.
Is this just theory?
No,
Or
it's a fact. It won the Nobel Prize in 2022, Nobel Prize in Physics.
that's interesting because I was gonna say that how can you possibly show? And I'm not doubting you by the way. I'm just saying how can you possibly show that two electrons? First of all, like any electron has a twin because as far as I understand, all electrons, all atoms are different from each other in some way. And so first of all, to
Hey,
show
did
that
you say they all have twins? Is that your claim?
no, I said that they all are different from each other. So how would you show?
Right.
Yeah. So how would you show that any two electrons are the same, and that
Yeah.
they are also basically behaving the exact same way, a universe apart?
Right. So they've run the experiment. Now they couldn't obviously put one on the other side of the universe, but all of the calculations say yeah, it happens there too. They have done it between stars, which is light years apart, and it works. They use Lagrangian points. They use this thing. It's a when you want to split, not split. When you want to entangle a photon or an electron, you use this crystal to do it. You use a beam splitter and a crystal, and it takes this one photon and it makes two of them. But it doesn't really make two. It's one of the same in two different places. And so when you can do it in your own bedroom if you have the equipment, and you'll notice that when you affect one, it affects the other one in zero time, which means it's not taking time. If you shoot a beam of light across your room, it's going to take this time to get to the other side of your room. But when you're dealing with photons and electrons, there is no time. It just happens instantaneously. And they can do that in a lab. Then they did it on one part of the Earth to the other part of the Earth. They did it from one star to another. It's all happening instantaneously. And so that's a fact. And they said it doesn't matter the distance, it's going to happen instantaneously, zero time. It could be on the other side of the universe. It still holds. Now, that said, that's the twin. That's when you split, not split. That's when you make a twin of a single particle. But every time a single particle collapses, it's instantaneous as well. It's happening faster than the speed of light. Whenever it's called vector collapse. So whenever you collapse a wave function of a particle, it's happening in zero time as well. And so the point in all of this is to say, and this comes from Wolfgang Smith, mathematics professor at MIT. Uh, he retired and then he passed in July. Uh, he uh, he said that look, this quantum collapse that's happening at zero time is proof that there is a domain that is outside of space and time. There's no other way around it. Physicists are confused and perplexed about this, but Wolfgang Smith says that the reason physicists are perplexed is because they're trying to answer this on the basis of physics when the answer is metaphysical in nature. And I agree with Wolfgang.
So we have this process, which is a thing that is repeatable, testable, provable, which is supposedly metaphysical, or like it sounds like you're saying that it's theorized to be metaphysical, and it breaks the idea that nothing can surpass the speed of light.
Hey, I'm going to hold on a sec. I'm going to get a refill on my coffee. I'll be right back.
All right.
Happening when quantum particles collapse. As soon as they're measured, they stop being quantum. Now they are non-quantum.
Oh yeah.
Object of real.
The thing I was gonna ask is, so we have this process that is repeatable, testable.
Sorry, and the best. Sorry, I can't hear you right now because I'm in line waiting. The best way to interpret that is through Aristotle, which is a potential being coming into actual being, potency to act, potential to act. The problem with physics is that they think those quantum particles are real before they're measured. That's why they're all confused. Wolfgang Smith has solved this. He said, no, they're potential beings that come into being when they're measured or observed. That's why the transition is happening instantaneously, faster than the speed of light. That's because they're not physical. They don't. If they were physical and had being, it would take the speed of light for them to transition from quantum to classical. But because they don't have being, there is no space or time in which they exist at all. So when they come into being for the first time, it's outside of the space and time of physics because they're not physical. They're not bound by physics.
Can you hear me? He can't hear me. All right, I'll wait. Yeah, so I just kind of wanted to bridge the gap a little bit. So we have this process that you're describing. I've kind of forgotten most of it. I'm not a physicist. It's that, so we have the process of like the two atoms which could be universally apart from each other, and which we can reliably, testably, we can repeat, test, and show results for. That's something that breaks the laws of physics as we understand them through Einstein and all this stuff. How do we get from this process exists to tripartite cosmos, meaning like the existence of space and then a higher level time and then a higher level something else?
Well, what entanglement does, and entanglement is two particles, but even when a single particle is measured, it collapses instantaneously, which is zero time. So already that proves that there is a domain that transcends both space and time. So let's put it in a hypothetical. Let's say that you throw your task is to throw a baseball to the moon. Now imagine the amount of power that you would have to throw it with your arm to get to the moon. Well, guess what? The fastest you could go would be the speed of light, which is 386,000 miles per second. But still, that's still in time. Now your task is, no, I want you to go faster than that. I want you to, as soon as it leaves your hand, I want it to end up on the moon. The instant. That's zero time. You would say, you're crazy. This is impossible. It would break the laws of physics. And you'd be right. But guess what? That happens every time you measure a particle.
Every time you measure a particle, like, well, what's the process?
Yes.
What's the process of measuring a particle?
Well, you shoot the classic double slit is one way.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. So you just shoot it through a photon gun or electron gun at a wall, and it's going to collapse. But that's in the lab, but it's happening all around you right now. I mean, you're collapsing particles as soon as you move your hand in the air. And when I say particles, I put that in quotes. They don't actually exist until you measure them, which means until you act upon them. And so this notion that quantum particles are causing you and me is a farce. It doesn't work. That pipe dream for physicalism is dead now. What happens is we cause it to come into being. Quantum particles do not cause us to come into being. So this is Wolfgang Smith's top-down causation, which is from above to below, whereas physicalism insists that everything is bottom-up. from meaningless particles to the mind that you have and that you use.
And how about I ask the real meat and bones of what a religious person would ask you? Is like, does this imply like a spiritual realm or heaven and
Of
hell,
course,
and like the
of
under
course, the spiritual realm is the domain that is transcendent of both space and time. So if you look at my cosmic icon in my profile, that's Wolfgang Smith's cosmic icon. He likens the circle to space. He likens the line to time. He likens the point in the middle that from which both of those systems come. So what's incredible, and all the great Greek philosophers thought geometrically, which spiritual geometry, and so Wolfgang Smith, as a mathematician, thinks geometrically as well. And Wolfgang says, consider the point of geometry. The point has literally no dimensions. It's totally dimensionless. He said, but from a point comes a line. Now you're in one dimension, and that's time. The line is time. At the end of the line, you draw a sweep, and now you're in space. Okay.
I thought the dot in the middle was space.
No, the circle is space because the
whole
circle is a
dot is the
circle.
soul.
Got you.
Yeah. The
dot
point.
is the soul.
The dot is the spirit, and that's the thing that guides everything you do.
No way, I was actually right.
Yes, and then the line is your mind when you're reasoning. What is 2 + 2? You don't know yet,
Where is your ass?
and so that's what you'll want to consider here with the cosmic icon.
Also, probably a dumb but also a smart question. Define time in this
Sure.
way, in this context.
Time is the plenitude which allows spatial events to take place.
The what was the first word you said? The what that allows spatial events to take place?
Time is a plenitude. It is the plentiful thing which allows spatial events to take place within time. Time allows for these spatial events, changes, moving from left to right, a particle, I'm sorry, an atom or something moving from left to right, a galaxy shifting from left to right. These are spatial objects that time allows to have events. Wolfgang Smith puts it like this. In this beautiful quote, he demonstrates the utterly universe-shattering fact that time is transcendent to space, and he says it this way. He says, all of space is there in any moment in time, but it is not the case that all of time is in any location in space.
I'm thinking something that someone else said to me, who is deep into philosophy, is that they argue for the unexistence of time and that we live in an atemporal reality. Would you say that since time is transcendent, that implies atemporal? Like the universe is then atemporal?
Time, the only thing time is transcendent of is space. But then there has to be a thing that caused time to kick off. That's the domain that is atemporal. It's the thing that caused time.
Then how would you disprove B theory of time?
Well, there are lots of disproofs of that. One is that most of our fundamental laws are Markovian, and Markovian physics relies on the fact that the present exists, the past no longer exists, and the future can only be surmised. And so the fact that most of the fundamental laws of physics are Markovian blows out of the water the idea that the past is still with us.
Has this information led you down like a religious path at all?
Yeah, of course. I'm a Christian.
Did you become a Christian because of this?
Yes, I did.
Really?
I mean, no, I didn't. I was raised Christian.
Oh. Was this more of a confirmation bias then? Whenever you're learning about this stuff and all these words that I can't even comprehend, by the way. No offense.
Well, in 1999, I stumbled upon a book called The Handbook of Christian Apologetics, and I thought, what is even apologetics? What's that even mean? So it was a big fancy word that I wanted to know more about, and so I got the book at like a rummage sale, and it utterly wrecked my life. I was already a Christian, but this actually gave me reasons to believe what I was
Right.
feeling, and it gave me, yeah, Thomistic philosophy.
Oh,
It gave
really?
me all of these great philosophies and arguments, by the way, that were solid, beyond solid. And I'm like, finally, somebody's putting this to paper. Um, and so then in 2018, I met the great Wolfgang Smith, mathematics professor at MIT, and he was in company of Albert Einstein. He solved NASA's reentry problem. I mean, he's a great thinker and was a dear friend of mine.
Why do you
Uh,
keep glazing him?
and well, because every disciple should have a mentor.
Hmm.
In the ancient time, wisdom was passed down from master to disciple, and we've broken that thread. We've lost that thread. Now people don't even know what wisdom is. So how are they going to find it or even look for it? You need a master. You need a mentor.
Do you think you can pass wisdom up?
No, you cannot.
You don't think young people can be wise?
It's used. It's unidirectional. Downward causation, top-down causation. Wisdom
Yeah, but like,
flows.
I'm talking about like age. You don't think young people can be wise and pass wisdom up to the elders?
Yeah, of course. Yeah, you can have a 14-year-old who's wiser than some drunken idiot 50 or 60-year-old.
I'm curious, like, so you were born a Christian and raised a Christian your whole life, and this stuff helped reaffirm your belief in Christianity. But could it also
Yeah.
apply to just Islam? Could it apply to Buddhism or some other mainstream religion?
Yeah, I mean, it's because it's true. This is like asking, does 2 plus 2 apply to the Muslim, equaling 4? Of course it does.
Right.
Yeah, this is just physics. And so for me, well, it's metaphysics and physics. It's a correct interpretation of physics. Finally, the what Wolfgang Smith does is he destroys any possibility for physicalism, and he is himself a mathematician and physicist at the MIT PhD level. He was a professor there, and so when he says something about this, we should listen. And so what he demonstrates is that physics is showing us its limit. It's announcing its limit to us, and it in doing so destroys any possibility of physicalism, the belief that all there is the physical. And so, as Wolfgang says, knowing this, we must now attend to the metaphysical, which is the philosophical domain, the spiritual domain, and realize that that is the real world. Physics is just the lowest in this ontology, not the highest. Physicalism says physics is the highest. Wolfgang Smith comes along and says, no, in fact, it's quite the opposite. It's the lowest.
And I know it seems like my questions that I'm asking you make me sound like a broken record, but I still am curious to ask you, with the distinguished man that you are, with with more PhDs than anyone else on the server put together, I would say, because no one on the server has a PhD. How would you reason your way to like Jesus' resurrection, or more of the simple things of Christianity?
Yeah, if you want to use reasoning, then you're just going to have to go to the history, and you're going to have to show, number one, that Christ existed. And this is admitted to by 99% of atheist historians. They will say, yes, this Christ figure actually existed. So that's number one. That just takes mere reasoning, by accepting the standard of historical scholarship. And they will admit, 99% of them, that Christ actually existed. Okay, so then you start studying his life, and you realize he is different than any other figure. As far as the resurrection go, you go back to history and the accounts, and you do see, historically speaking, that there were dynamic changes in the world and in people who supposedly witnessed this resurrection, accepting death by execution, for this belief. Also, things that uh, things that are inexplicable had they not witnessed something. And then you have to say to yourself, okay, either they actually witnessed it or 400 people were hallucinating at the exact same time. So that kind of reasoning can get you into, okay, maybe this Christianity is true. However, I want to qualify all of this by saying, and this comes from Wolfgang Smith as well, you cannot reason yourself to God. Reasoning is a tool, but then there's knowing. There's a point when you have to stop reasoning and start knowing. This is the difference between the point and the line in that cosmic icon. The line is reasoning, and that happens in time. You see the ing, happening in time, ing. So when you're reasoning, it's happening in time, but you can reason yourself into an insane asylum, like these physicalists do. Physicalists will tell you that you don't even have a mind. They'll tell you your mind is a particle. They'll tell you that the grass is not green, that the apple is not sweet. All there are atoms in the void. Everything's an illusion. That's reasoning, and that's reasoning yourself into absurdity. Then there's reasoning toward truth. And so you better hope that your reasoning is in line with the truth instead of off that center. And that's why you see that line in the cosmic icon is pointing right at uh, that point, the center. Wolfgang Smith says that everything that is good has a center. That goes for a human body, a spatial object like a body or a cup of coffee. They all have a physical center, but the human has a mental center as well. You want to center the mind. And you want to center your mind, which is your reasoning faculty, on your spiritual sense that is connected to God. So you cannot reason yourself to God, but it will get you on the path. At some point, you have to, reasoning goes away, and you must start knowing, which is the direct experience of God, to where all the reasoning is but straw. To borrow from Thomas Aquinas, who close to death said, everything I have written, everything that I have said is mere straw compared to what I just saw, what I just experienced. And he died. In other words, all of our manly philosophy and human reasoning is nonsense once you have a single experience with God. It all goes away.
The do. I'm trying to think of more questions, but I'm pretty much blacked out or blanked out. I don't know. I don't know what you would call it. I'm out of ideas.
Well, you must go and spread my message. You must go and give the good news.